Welcome to the Skeptic Zone, the podcast from Australia for science and reason.
Yes, it's the Skeptic Zone podcast, episode number 636 for the 20th of December 2020. Richard Saunders here with you from Sydney, Australia. Overcast, very muggy, very humid over the last week. Exceptionally humid, up to 80-90% humidity. Oh, the sort of weather I just love. Coming up on this week's episode of the Skeptic Zone, we have a brief chat with Susan Gerbic from Guerrilla Skepticism on Wikipedia. What's been going on over there at Guerrilla Skepticism now that the vaccine is being rolled out for COVID-19. And we also discuss Bent Spoon winner, the former TV famous celebrity chef, whatever you want to call him, conspiracy theorist Pete Evans, what he's been up to now. In the last few days, we discovered there's a fresh outbreak of COVID-19 in Sydney. And while all hands should be on deck to get on top of this outbreak, people like Pete Evans are doing everything they can, it seems, to throw a spanner in the works. All that and more with Susan Gerbic coming up at the top of the show. Following that, we go once again into the treasure trove, that is Trove, the online resource of digitised newspapers and so on, and we look for reports about Uri Geller from his heyday from the early 1970s. Yes, Uri Geller was making news here in Australia and around the world in the early 1970s. Let's have a look to see what the papers were reporting at that time. Then it's Logical Fallacies with Michelle Bijkersma. This week, Michelle looks at Ipse Dixit. Ipse Dixit. Sounds interesting. Stay tuned for that. Then we round off the show with the latest news update from Australian skeptics, written and compiled by Tim Mendham. I wonder if Tim Mendham has ever been to Canada. I'll have to ask him. Now, before we get stuck into the show, it's been my habit over the last 6, 7, 8 months to do long walks every week, and it's doing me the world of good, I must say. And I know it's hard, depending on where you are in the world. Well, winter is here, if you're in the Northern Hemisphere, and the various lockdowns and everywhere, but long walks, and is, for me personally, is a way to clear my mind, and then refill it with lots of interesting podcasts from my fellow podcasters all around the world, from the various skeptical and other podcasts I love to listen to. And it's great also to listen to audiobooks. I'm listening to a very interesting one at the moment by Steven Pinker. But before I do all that, it's time for me to run downstairs and maybe have some of my special toast. Well, the toast isn't special, it's just toast, cooked bread. But I like to put on a bit of my special peanut butter, which is, it's just standard peanut butter from the supermarket, but I mix it up with a little bit of sesame oil, throw in a few crushed chili flakes, quite a few crushed chili flakes, just a little bit of soy sauce, mix it all up, and it makes for a very delicious peanut butter toast. While I do that, I hope you enjoy the Skeptic Zone.
I think we need to think. Here's Susan Gerbic.
Joining me now on the line for her regular update from Guerrilla Skepticism on Wikipedia, it's none other than Susan Gerbic. Hello, Susan.
Hi, Richard. It's so great to talk to you and so great to talk to the Skeptic Zone people again.
Now, you were on the show not so long ago, but I thought I'd better catch up with you now because I noticed you post something the other day in relation to Wikipedia and vaccination, which is a very important topic about now.
Right. People ask me from time to time what the GSoW project is doing concerning the coronavirus. And we have done a few pages that are dealing with coronavirus, but for the most part, what we're doing is we're spending a lot of our time working on vaccination pages that are anti-vaccine, organizations, people who are anti-vaccination, and also pro-vaccination people, scientists, virologists, and also news about vaccinations. We wrote the Wikipedia page for the 1976 swine flu outbreak, and that has been going crazy, that Wikipedia page. Also the 2019 Samoa measles outbreak, the 2019 Tonga measles outbreak, all kinds of different pages that are associated with vaccinations, but maybe not something you would come to your mind right away, but and in multiple languages besides English. Well, Richard, one of the things we've been doing is my team has been letting me know that they're starting to have a little downtime. A lot of the people in our group are students or teachers, and they're seeing that they have a bit of a break coming up the next few weeks. So there's been a lot of talk in the Secret Cabal about what we should be working on. And it keeps coming back to let's focus on things that are vaccination related. So we've been spending some time today discussing what we think needs to be improved or what needs to be rewritten or written. And I'm happy to take suggestions from the Skeptic Zone world out there. If you guys all have ideas of things that need to be done, please send us a message to our Facebook page, which is About Time Project, or to me directly, Susan Gerbic, on Messenger. I use Facebook a lot. So we have a lot of different fingers in the fires. And one of the things I tell my team to do is to concentrate on the people who are in the news a lot, mainly people who are those administrators who are approving the vaccinations or who are setting the requirements, or just names that you see. There's a lot of different people in health departments, health world that probably deserve to have Wikipedia pages. And right now they're getting a lot of attention, so it's easier to write the Wikipedia page if they do. But we need people from all over the world to be represented. It's a great chance to bring attention to those scientists and health department officials who may not be scientists to get their Wikipedia pages.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a very important thing to do, especially about now with what's going on. And as of recording, which is in Sydney, Australia, it's coming up to, it's Friday afternoon here. And we've just had the news today that there are 28 new cases of coronavirus in Sydney, which is a terrible thing because we'd be going so well. No outbreaks, cruising along. People got a bit complacent. So we've got some more outbreaks, and we hope it doesn't spread. We hope the numbers don't grow. But I thought I'd let you know, talking about prominent people. Well, you know that the Australian Skeptics gave their Ben Spoon Award to Pete Evans, the former celebrity chef. Now,
I think it's the second time, isn't it?
It's the second time, absolutely. And this came to my attention just today from news.com.au, and I think it's been reported elsewhere. Pete Evans, it says, urges Sydney-siders to not get tested amid new COVID outbreak. Goes on to say, Pete Evans has made his opinions about the current COVID outbreak in Sydney's northern beaches very clear. He has urged people to not get tested at all, despite health officials doing everything they can to contain the spread. Posting on Facebook, the disgraced celebrity chef, it says, an outspoken anti-vaxxer, shared a photo of an article that read, Sydney's COVID outbreak grows with 2 new cases overnight. So that's a slightly earlier article before we learn of there's 28. In his caption, Evans wrote, outbreak? 2 cases? And then along with clown face emojis, he added, can you see where this is heading again? Testing for the common cold? Do not get tested. So we have our heroes out there fighting the good fight, doing everything they can to contain this horror which has been inflicted upon the world. And we've got bozos like Pete Evans doing everything he can to, I don't even know what to say anymore. Somebody who's actively out there acting against the public good.
Yes, it's frustrating. I completely understand, but we can't give up just because they seem to be coming out of the woodwork and they seem to be outnumbering us. I don't believe that's true. I believe they're crying out for their attention, and we need to combat them as we see them and inoculate the public about who these people are and what their message is and why it's wrong. And let's support the people who are doing good science and who are making great messages and supporting them, not just our scientists and so on, but people who are doing good work. And like Dolly Parton, who donated $1 million at the beginning of the need to get funding. I think it was Vanderbilt University, and her money went on to help out in the end to help produce vaccinations. She's not somebody you would normally associate with vaccinations, but her message and the support she's given is something we should be applauding. And I think that kind of thing is great. And when we hear heartwarming stories like that, I feel better. I think that we're going to get through this. I'm in California, which has 28. 28 would be amazing. That would be, we're getting 28 a minute here, new cases, if not more. And it's frightening. Where I live, which is nowhere near LA or San Diego, we're doing our best. Everybody here in town pretty much is masked. And, we're staying as safe as we possibly can and staying home.
Now, Guerrilla Skepticism on Wikipedia, always doing important work, and I think there's going to be a lot of work in the near future because the anti-vaxxers are just getting into their stride because of this new vaccine being rolled out. They must be apoplectic.
It's like I keep thinking it's a tsunami. It's a tsunami of misinformation that's going to be coming at us, and we have to be ready and take it on. And the GSoW project only has as many people as it has. If people can help support us by joining, that'd be great. If they could contact us with suggestions, that is helpful too as well. And I think we're going to get through this. It's going to happen. It is frightening, but I think together we're going to be all right.
I think so. And a big shout out to all the Australians who are part of Guerrilla Skepticism on Wikipedia. I know you've got a lot of editors.
Richard, I'd like to take a minute really quick and just thank you for all the work that you've done and all the support you've given us over the years. I know it's, I say it often, how important the Skeptic Zone and the Skeptic Zone listeners are to making Guerrilla Skepticism on Wikipedia a force to be reckoned with, the powerhouse that it is. And, with your announcements that you're doing, like right now, it is such a help to us. And we have a large amount of people who join GSoW that have heard about us from the Skeptic Zone. And they're not all Australians. There are people who come to us from all around the world who are your listeners and who say, I really want to help out. And I just got one a few minutes ago. I've got to write back to her that was telling me that she's heard about GSoW on the Skeptic Zone and she really wants to help out. And, I know you probably don't hear it as much as you should, but you're an important part of our community and a very important part of the success that we're having in the community, not just GSoW, but in a lot of different ways. And I want to thank you.
Well, that's very kind of you to say so. That means an awful lot. But let's continue. We've got 2021 coming down on us like a ton of bricks, and I'm sure GSoW will be more important than ever. But for now, Susan Gerbic, and you better get ready because it's almost time for your weekly trivia.
And let me make it official and say that 555 is going to eventually come up on, I know we're getting close. We've had a couple, and then we had last week, I think there was one. And, I'm going to keep calling 555 as the rules because it's just as likely it's going to be 555 as it's going to be any other random numbers that are out there, except when you're rolling a 3-sided dice or something, or something.
For those people who don't know, if you listen after the music, often we have an Easter egg of a dice game, and Susan always wants 5 to come up. Susan, all I can say is please listen at the end of this episode to the dice game.
Ooh. But you know what, Richard? I'm getting to a point where I'm thinking you're going to just do something to mess with me.
Well, let me tell you something. Quite honestly, every time I roll the die, I always say honestly what it comes up. I never fudge that, okay?
I trust you.
All right, then. Once again, Susan, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Richard.
The Earth is only 6,000 years old. That's what Answers in Genesis and the Creation Museum say, and how can a museum be wrong?
Isn't Dr. Oz just wonderful? I loved today's episode. It didn't talk down to his adoring audience of women at all.
Science has proved that the subatomic quantum realm is as real as it is counterintuitive and bizarre. Therefore, I can use it to support quantum healing and quantum consciousness. After all, how can journals like Aquarius Metaphysics be wrong?
Evolution is just a theory. After all, if we came from monkeys, then why are there still monkeys?
We all have friends and family who believe these things and much more. Well, if you're a rational thinker who is tired of arguing on social media and never getting anywhere, we have a solution for you.
Join the Guerrilla Skepticism and Wikipedia team, and we will teach you how to add reliable scientific and skeptical information to the world's #1 source of information, Wikipedia.
We write new articles and improve existing ones. We remove pseudoscience, paranormal, and alt-med claims, substituting the actual facts. And we operate in many languages.
We've already reached tens of millions of people searching for information, but as you can imagine, we can never do enough.
So please join us. All you need is a PC and the desire to help educate the planet. In fact, you'll be educating the world while you sleep.
Contact us at GSoW@gmail.com.
Guerrilla Skepticism. The time is now.
Music by PurplePlanet.com.
Now it's time once again to dive into the treasure trove. That is Trove, the online resource from the Australian Government and the National Library of Australia. Magazines, periodicals, clippings, journals, newspapers, gazettes, everything you could imagine. Collected over many years. Now, a couple of weeks ago on the Skeptic Zone, I told the story, more or less, of how I became a skeptic, and in the telling of that, I remarked that in the 1970s, the early 1970s, when I was just a young boy, my brother and I were convinced that Uri Geller could bend spoons over the television, because that's what we were told, and when you're a little kid, that's what you believe. Which got me thinking, I wonder what references I can find to that period in history and Uri Geller. So, with the help of Trove and my own independent research at the State Library of New South Wales, I've amassed quite a collection, an interesting collection of articles from newspapers around that time. And I'd like to share a few with you today. One of the earliest references I have to Uri Geller in Australian press comes from the Sydney Morning Herald on the 8th of December 1973, which ties in very well with the period in history. The article is called Uri the Mind Bender in Action. From a staff correspondent in London, it says, and the accompanying picture is Uri Geller with what appears to be a bent fork and other things, not quite clear, with the caption, Uri Geller holds metal objects he has bent. It takes quite something to divert the attention of the British people away from the fuel crisis, but Uri Geller, the amazing 26-year-old Israeli metal bender, managed to upstage the petrol rationing books and miners' summit talks during his barnstorming visit to London. If newspaper reports are to be believed, Uri has forks and spoons bending by the drawful over the country, not to mention front door keys snapping and broken clocks suddenly starting to tick again. His claims received greater credence after a spectacular performance on BBC's Dimbleby Talk-In, where he mystified everybody by coaxing BBC canteen forks and spoons to bend at right angles by holding them and stroking them gently. Now, I'll make a comment here that I've got a copy of that appearance on Dimbleby Talks. And when you know the trick of spoon bending and you see somebody else do it, Uri Geller or anybody else do it, it's quite something, because you can think to yourself, oh, he's doing it that way. Oh, he's using that technique. Oh, there's the gimmick. Oh, I see what he's doing. It's quite funny in a way to watch it. I'll continue. He also duplicated a picture of a sailing boat drawn previously by a television employee and sealed inside an envelope. Magical stuff and great fun, but he claims he is genuine. Moreover, some reputable scientists in both Britain and the United States are willing to suspend disbelief while his feats are thoroughly investigated. Last year, Uri underwent controlled tests at the Stanford Research Institute in California, where he reproduced 7 drawings made without his prior knowledge and predicted correctly how a dice would fall 8 times in a row. And I'll make another comment here that if you get your hands on a copy of The Truth About Uri Geller by James Randi, then his antics at the Stanford Research Institute in California are less than impressive. I'll continue. Screwdrivers, which he claimed he snapped by mental concentration in Philadelphia, are now being examined by the Metallurgy Department of Cambridge University. Dr. John Chilton of the department has examined the screwdrivers with a jeweler's microscope and has found no sign of cutting, burning, or the use of acid. There is no normal explanation, no trickery. And another break and a comment from me that Geller would often use the classic straw man or red herring of saying acid, there's no acid on my fingers, or things like that. Or, of course, there was never any question of acid on his fingers or anywhere else. We read on. The screwdrivers were sent to Cambridge by an international group of scientists whose convener is Dr. Edward Baston of King's College, London. The Cambridge metallurgists now plan future tests on the tempered steel screwdrivers. But while some scientists are prepared to reserve judgment, 2 of the world's best-known magicians have poured professional scorn on Uri's feats. In London, Ali Bongo, a stage magician, said, "Uri is just a skilled illusionist." This brought angry denials from Uri. "If there is any magician who thinks he can do what I can do, let him try, in their laboratory, as I have done." The magicians are jealous, he says. In America, another magician, James Randi, has duplicated, under supervision, all of Geller's tricks, and says, "Scientists are the easiest people to fool. Geller knows how they think, and this makes it all the more easier for him." The journal, New Scientist, taking a careful but not altogether negative view of Geller's claims, is ready to carry out its own tests on his powers. A committee, including a physicist, a biologist, a research psychologist, a journalist, and a professional magician, has been appointed to supervise the tests. But so far, Geller has not said whether he will cooperate. The New Scientist believes that a satisfactory demonstration in an independent critical group in Britain could serve to accelerate parapsychological research by confirming Stanford's controversial findings. Meanwhile, Geller continues to startle and amuse. He performed incessantly during his British visit, bending spoons and forks when they were presented to him. A journalist from The Guardian was knocked off balance when he made her front door key curl up in the palm of her hand. A popular Sunday paper asked its millions of readers to concentrate over their Sunday dinners and watch Uri crumple their cutlery by remote telepathic control. The newspaper's switchboard was jammed by frantic housewives swearing they'd seen forks and spoons turn 45 degrees, then snap in half. A comment from me. Ooh, I wonder if this was the origin of this Uri Geller can bend spoons over the television myth. We read on. Uri, formerly a male model, has an engaging manner. He first noticed his telepathic abilities, he says, as a 2-year-old, when he found he could communicate with his mother without uttering a word. By the age of 7, he was merrily bending metal. Later, when he entered the Israeli army, he switched off. There are some times and places, he believes, where metal bending is not appropriate. He returned to his mind bending during a cruise around the Greek Isles in the French vessel René Saint-Louis, when, to the captain's dismay, he says, he concentrated so hard he stopped the ship's engines. His business manager, Mr. Yasha Katz, said Uri is also good at stopping cable cars and escalators and can bend massive bars of steel. So far, he hasn't tried to hijack a jumbo jet. That, says Uri, is probably possible, but it would take about 6 hours of intense concentration, and the outcome might not be very nice. Now I need to have another comment in here once more. I've seen this before, and I think it was on this Dimbleby program where somebody presented Uri Geller with a big, sturdy steel bar and said, could you bend that? And Geller, to his credit as a showman, got out of it brilliantly, I think. He said something along the lines of, well, yes, of course I can, but it would take a long time, about half an hour. See me after the show and we'll try, or something like that. Of course, after the show, who cares what happens? Geller probably didn't see the man at all, but it made it appear Geller could do it. Now let's read on. Now people are asking, where does Uri go from here? If his ability is genuine, it can be harnessed to more useful purposes, surely, than the mere bending of a nation's cutlery. Now the next reference I have here comes from the Canberra Times, and this was published on the 6th of February 1974, so not very long after the last article. Tour cut over threats. London, Tuesday. AAP Reuter. Mr. Uri Geller, the man who says he has magical metal bending powers, has cancelled a session set for Friday with the New Scientist magazine panel, which hoped to examine his claims systematically. Mr. Geller cut short a British tour on Sunday night because of threats to his life and was given a police escort to Heathrow Airport from where he left for a secret destination. His home is in New York. Mr. Geller's metal bending act has baffled audiences around the world, but some scientists have questioned his performance. And that's the end of that article. I don't remember hearing about this episode. It seems like a typical publicity stunt, though, or something you'd say to get publicity. Notoriety, maybe. And that he wasn't willing to be tested by the panel is hardly surprising. Now, the next related article I find comes from 1975 on the 23rd of January in a section that seems to be called Gang Gang. And it says, Mystic Bent, a challenge to scientists. And I can't see that this has been credited to any writer in particular. It is time scientists, quote, turned the searchlight, end quote, on claims of clairvoyance, fork benders and their ilk, according to the editor of the prestigious British-based international science journal Nature, Dr. David Davies, and there's an accompanying picture of Dr. Davies in the article. Dr. David Davies in Canberra for the ANZUS conference published in Nature last year a report on Stanford University's research into some of Mr. Uri Geller's clairvoyant claims, which found evidence of apparent psychic powers. 3,000 unbelievably dull words, in a belief that it was interesting to science to get it out and widely known. The general public is interested in whether there is anything beyond the straight-line sciences, he said. I am sure more people believe Geller than don't. An editor's job is to sit between two heaps. I won't comment on it, but a member of my staff had a key bent by him and didn't see him with anything. So he must have incredible technology, or science really ought to be getting onto it. And a comment from me, what logical fallacy is that? Appeal to ignorance? Maybe it's another one, but isn't that interesting? Because he couldn't understand how the trick worked. He doesn't even take it into consideration that it's a trick. So he's looking for incredible technology, which is quite laughable, really, or it must be real. Isn't that interesting? Let's read on. In an editorial in last week's issue of Nature, he challenged scientists to take a more practical interest in such issues, lest parascience recede further into the mystic's world and take with it much of the public sympathy. Not that he sees that as any major issue of the immediate future. In that category, he places the controversy over climate change. Whether, for instance, we will have another ice age, and that between the scientists on whether man should be studied at the molecular level or as a whole thing. Dr. Davies is a former research assistant at Cambridge University who worked during the 1960s studying the structure of the ocean floors, particularly the Indian Ocean and the Red Sea. He moved from that to help scientists in America working on methods of detecting underground nuclear tests, but opted out on realizing that scientists are on a piece of string. Politicians make the decisions. Now he edits Nature, publishing about 1/3 of the material submitted to him, including some which might at first appear bizarre. Some of the most bizarre ideas we have used to have turned out to be right. The world of nature has a lot of surprises. One of the most bizarre was that rocks on the bottom of the sea acted like giant magnetic recorders. But it revolutionized the earth sciences. And that again was from the Canberra Times, dated the 23rd of January 1975. Now we have an interesting one, dated the 24th of February 1975, and this comes to us from the Sydney Morning Herald. It's an advertising or a very short announcement. And tiny writing at the top, it says, extra appearance, Sunday, March 9th at 8:15. And the big bold heading says, Friday, March 7 at 8:15 p.m, Sydney Town Hall, Uri Geller, Mindbender, expanding the frontiers of man and science. Important note, patrons attending Uri's appearances, wherever they are seated, will witness his every movement through strategically placed TV receivers all around the hall. This is closed circuit and will not be relayed outside the hall. Over-the-counting bookings open today. Town Hall, Grace Brothers, Chatswood, Roselands, Bondi Junction, and DJs. Note, Capacity House is expected, so book now. For party concessions, 20 or more, phone 298335. Flying Japan Airlines, Ansett Airlines. Wow, how about that? Wouldn't you just love to go and be in the audience for that performance all those years ago at Sydney's Town Hall? But let's do one final one, and this is from the Sydney Morning Herald, 2nd of March 1975. Uri's Startling Airport Act by Grant Thompson. And there's an accompanying picture of a smiling Uri Geller with appears to be a bent key in his hand. Uri Geller yesterday, complete with his bent key. Yep. The mind power of Uri Geller made my car key curl up like a leaf yesterday while I held it. And I'll just break here to say that is a stock standard magician's trick when it comes to spoons and keys bending, to make it appear that the key or the spoon bends in your victim's hand. Let's read this article. The thickest thing I have ever bent is a crowbar, Mr. Geller said after his arrival at Sydney Airport from Tokyo to begin a lecture tour of Australia. I don't feel anything strange when I try to bend a metal object. I just think, bend, bend. I am not unique. I think many other people have similar powers, but perhaps I'm stronger than anyone else. My bent car key is a souvenir of a stunt that is mere child's play for the psychokinetic abilities of Mr. Geller. Simply by stroking the top of the key with his index finger, while I held it in the presence of about 30 witnesses, he made the key start to curl within seconds. For about 10 minutes after he touched it, the key slowly continued to bend. I am being studied at several universities and institutions, including University of London and a laboratory run by the American Defense Department, Mr. Geller said. There have been times when I have apparently erased tapes on a computer in a shielded room. Strange things happen around me all the time. Keys bend in people's pockets and watches stop or start. Some weeks ago I had dinner in a New York restaurant with Salvador Dali, who has been painting bent things for years. Suddenly his spoon bent. He looked at it and without a word put it into his pocket and took it home to paint it. I bent Werner von Braun's gold wedding ring so much that he couldn't get it back on his finger. A former soldier in the Israeli army, Mr. Geller, 27, decided to capitalize on his powers 4 years ago. He became a show business celebrity with the help of the London-based Australian entrepreneur Robert Stigwood. And there we'll leave it. There are many, as you can imagine, many more newspaper clippings and articles from here in Australia and around the world with Uri Geller. And for a time in the 1970s, 73, 74, 75, he was certainly noteworthy and reported upon. And with largely uncritical reporting, as we've just heard over the last few segments, is it any wonder that small boys would hide cutlery for fear that Uri Geller would bend them over the TV? And you can read most of those articles, some I have collected from elsewhere, but most of those articles for yourself by visiting Trove at trove.nla.gov.au and diving into that treasure trove indeed.
Hi, my name's Jo Thornley, and I'd like you to join I'd like you to listen to my podcast about cults called Zealot. It's available pretty much anywhere you find podcasts, with further reading on the Zealot Facebook page. Each episode, a guest joins me to talk about a specific cult, where we answer the big questions like, is there yoga in it? Is there yoga in it? And does anyone think they're Jesus? Does anyone think that Jesus? Pop over to my compound and have a listen. I've just mixed up a fresh batch of Kool-Aid.
Oh, Zealot.
Logical fallacies. What are logical fallacies, and why is it important that critical thinkers should know about them? A logical fallacy is an error we can make in reasoning, but it usually crops up when we are discussing or arguing our point of view. Some people might even knowingly use them to try and score cheap points in an argument due to intellectual laziness. They are traps we can fall into, but if we know what to look out for, we can spot them when they occur and stop ourselves from using them. This time, we'll look at Ipse Dixit.
Also known as it simply is, this is when an opinion is given as if it were an undisputed fact, without any need for supporting evidence.
This fallacy occurs when someone just assumes something is true or real and therefore cannot see the need to offer any proof to back up their point.
I went to see the doctor about my sore neck, but a week later I'm still in pain. I should have known better. Doctors don't know what they're doing and are only paid shills for Big Pharma. Everyone knows that.
This unsupported point of view is all too common among certain alternative medicine devotees and conspiracy theorists alike. To them, it's true because it conforms with their worldview. The term everyone knows is a red flag that can indicate a poor argument.
It's true that the stars in the heavens can foretell the future and control our destiny. Why is it true? It's true because it just is true. I mean, it seems obvious to me, and people have known about this for thousands of years.
Saying something is true because it's true is a classic Ipse Dixit. In this case, the appeal to tradition is also used to seem to add weight to the non-argument.
I asked my medical professional why I should take the remedy she recommended. She told me it was because she recommends it. Okay then, I better take it.
As you can see in this example, no real reason is given as to why the remedy should be taken. Oh, and there's another red flag in there too. Watch out for the term medical professional. Sadly, these days that term can include homeopaths, naturopaths, and others using unproven modalities. Even if an argument seems to make sense or seems to be true, it needs more than an unsupported conclusion in order for it to be a valid case or point of view. Knowing a logical fallacy when you hear one, and even knowing its name, is important when arguing your point of view. However, you may come across as arrogant and not get very far if you call it out by name to your opponent when you hear it being used. If your opponent calls you out for using one, it's time to stop and think about how you are making your case. Use your knowledge of logical fallacies wisely, and remember that even if your point of view is right and you know all the pitfalls in arguing your case, it doesn't always mean you'll win on the day. And as skeptics, we must also remember that we too can be wrong at times. I'm Michelle Bijkersma from the Vic Skeptics. Thanks for listening.
Skeptics Cafe, online from Victoria, Australia. No matter where you are in the world, join us on Monday the 21st of December 2020 for a live talk online. Recent highlights of Australian paleontology with Associate Professor Paul Willis. There have been some significant developments in Australian paleontology over the last years, including important new finds of dinosaurs and other ancient beasts. We'll take a brief review of some of the highlights of paleontology in Australia. Paul Willis is known to millions of Australians via his long-time science reporting on ABC TV. More recently, he was the director of the Royal Institution of Australia and now heads up Media Engagement Services. In 2003, he was named Skeptic of the Year. Join us via Zoom, 8 p.m. for a chat, and then the talk begins at 8:30 p.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Time. That's 9 a.m. on the 21st UK time, 4 a.m. on the 21st East Coast USA time, and 1 a.m. on the 21st West Coast USA. For more information and the Zoom link, just head to www.facebook.com/The Skeptics Cafe. See you there. Australian Skeptics Newsletter number 113, written and compiled, or is it compiled and written, by Tim Mendham. And hello, Tim. Hi all, it says this is the last newsletter for this year, and what a year it has been. It has told a lot about human nature, like toilet paper is the commodity of choice for panicking consumers, that some people have no problem claiming that 5G caused COVID, even though they don't believe COVID exists, that anti-vaxxers have been lying in wait for any opportunity to spread fear, and that the vast bulk of Australians and New Zealanders are sensible, rational, unselfish, and cooperative people when it comes to coping with a very trying situation. We should be grateful that, at least for most of us, we live in such countries and have achieved such positive results. Well done all, especially those who have taken a sober and honest approach to the pandemic. So we wish you all the best for the coming festive/holiday/Saturnalia/summer solstice season. See you next year and stay skeptical. Read on. Tim. And each of these little news items comes complete with a link, so you can click and read the whole report for yourself. And the first one says, New Zealanders on misinformation. Fascinating survey on Kiwi attitudes. Some of the results replete with classic, quote, everyone's out of step except for me, end quote. The majority of New Zealanders surveyed agreed that disinformation has the ability to greatly influence someone's opinion, 91%. But far less, 53%, acknowledge that disinformation could influence them. Overall, the results are worrisome. Another item says the potential harm of alternative medicine. Interview by a clinical psychologist with famous campaigner against pseudo-medicine, Edzard Ernst, who refers to it as so-called alternative medicine by its acronym, and that is SCAM. Pseudoscientific treatments for addiction. The same clinical psychologist writes about the empirical base for psychosocial and pharmacological treatments for addictions versus alternatives such as naturopathy, energy medicine, hypnosis, animal therapy, etc. And a comment from me, if you ever want to go down a rabbit hole, just look up energy medicine. Talk about Alice in Wonderland. The next item says, what COVID-19 could teach journalists about science. Excellent long article from an African publication that is virtually a primer for both journalists and the public on the pitfalls in reporting, or just appreciating, how science works when faced with misinformation, bias, and false balance. Social media influencer, tactics, and conspiracy theories. While investigating how social media influencers were responding to the pandemic, a University of London researcher noticed that the techniques lifestyle gurus used to promote themselves were also being adopted by conspiracy theorists. Both influencers and conspiracy theorists could only thrive in a, quote, low-trust society, end quote, she says. Quote, there's no way these techniques would be nearly as effective if you didn't have a climate of distrust in authority figures, and if people were not generally uncertain and fearful, end quote. Not very flattering for influencers, but neither was the 2018 Bent Spoon Award from Australian skeptics for, quote, a holistic health and fitness YouTuber, end quote, Sarah Stevenson. Another article here, Isaac Newton's attempts to unlock secret code of pyramids. Unpublished notes showing that Newton's attempt to unlock the codes hidden in the Bible and determine the timing of the apocalypse recently went up for auction at Sotheby's. 3 slightly fire-damaged pages of scribblings on the Egyptian pyramids, which Newton believed held the key to profound secrets, were expected to fetch hundreds of thousands of pounds when online bidding closed. And they did. £378,000, which is about 220,000 per page. And in Australian dollars, totaling up, that's about 673, almost 674,000 Australian dollars. And I guess I could roughly say about 600,000 US dollars. And there are more reports for you to read, also letting you or reminding you that the December 2020 issue of the Skeptic magazine is out now. If you haven't subscribed, now is the time to do so. The issue includes a major feature on good scientists going off the track and an in-depth review of Judy Wileman's PhD, as mentioned last week on the Skeptic Zone, and how she used it to give her anti-vax views credibility. Plus the usual panoply of interesting and the weird, the worrisome, the fun, including a summary of Skepticon, and sadly we say goodbye to James the Amazing Randi. Upcoming events include Skeptics Cafe on the 21st of December with paleontologist Associate Professor Dr. Paul Willis, what a fine fellow he is, and links to Sydney, Canberra, Gold Coast and Queensland skeptics. And I can tell you that it looks like the next speaker for Sydney skeptics in the pub in January, which will be the first Thursday in January, is none other than skeptical investigator Kenny Biddle. Lots more to read, the Australian Skeptics Newsletter, and you can subscribe and get that newsletter delivered to you every other week at www.skeptics.com.au. With thanks to Tim Mendham. Thank you for listening to the Skeptic Zone. And on next week's show, on the 27th, the final episode of the Skeptic Zone for 2020, I don't know, Michelle Bijkersma. Luckily for me, she's done a few more logical fallacies I've got stored up, so I can play those over the next few weeks, and we'll see. Maybe one of my wonderful reporters can get me something. I don't know if you can hear that, but outside, let me open the window. Outside the Skeptic Zone studios, the rainbow lorikeets are going bonkers. Bananas, nuts. I don't know what it is. Maybe somebody out there in the listening audience knows. I think that this year, especially over the last few months, the number of rainbow lorikeets has increased dramatically. And that noise you can hear is more or less constant from just before dawn until dusk, which makes recording sometimes a little bit tricky. There are thousands upon thousands of these rainbow lorikeets. They're beautiful birds. I mean, they're little parrots and they are rainbow coloured. But boy, do they like to talk to each other. Thank you to those people who send me parrots, who contribute to the Skeptic Zone via Patreon or PayPal. It's your contributions, your generous contributions, that means the show keeps going. What's that now? High-flying crows now, I think. Maybe I should just do the show in a tree one day and be done with it. Yes, thank you to those people who do contribute. It means the show keeps going and you get to listen to it. And everybody else too. For those of you about to enjoy Christmas, I wish you a Merry Christmas. I do. with a special thought to those people in those places in the world still experiencing lockdown. And I just hope that the situation in Sydney, here in Sydney, doesn't get any worse than it is right now with the growing increase of the virus at the moment. But for this week, with all the birds joining in, this is Richard Saunders signing off. Oh, don't forget to listen. Don't forget to listen after the music this time. Adrian and Susan. This is Richard Saunders signing off from Sydney, Australia.
You've been listening to the Skeptic Zone podcast. Please visit our website at www.skepticzone.tv for show notes, contacts, and to access the back catalogue of episodes going back to 2008. You can follow the Skeptic Zone podcast on Twitter at Skeptic Zone, visit our Facebook page, or leave a review on iTunes. You can also support the Skeptic Zone via Patreon or PayPal. The Skeptic Zone podcast is an independent production. The views and opinions expressed on the Skeptic Zone are not necessarily those of Australian skeptics or any other skeptical organisation.
Well, hello to the afterthoughts, the people who listen after the music ends. I'm here at the, believe it or not, the Skeptic Zone sort of informal Christmas party. I'm with Maynard. Hi, Maynard, you have not been on the show much this year.
No, I haven't, mainly because I talk to people in person. That's my big thing, and you're not allowed to do that or else everyone will die.
Yes.
Yes.
It has been that sort of year.
That's one potential.
Well, normally you and I would do lots of interviews at conventions, but of course we couldn't this year.
That's right. With you, it was because you couldn't go. For me, it was because of the incident at Melbourne last year. I wasn't allowed, but with you were doing it over Zoom.
Yes, and Lara.
What me and Jay Novella got up to is no one's business. Let me say, we won't be welcome in North Melbourne for some time.
In Northcote.
And Northcote too.
And Northcote.
Yeah.
Hello, Lara.
Hi.
Hi, good to see you here at the informal Christmas party. And we have a die. It's a six-sided die this week, folks, and we're going to play the dice game. So, you at home, please consider what number you'd like to guess the dice will come up. The die will come up. What do you think, Lara?
I might go with 5.
Oh, 5.
Yeah.
Maynard?
I'm going to go with 1.
1. I'm going to go with 3. All right, here we go. I'm rolling the die now. It's a six-sided die, and it's a big one. And it's... Oh! It says on the side that's come up, Susan's number.
Susan?
I believe that's 5.
That's 5.
Oh, the actress from the Partridge Family. Fantastic.
Yes, Maynard. All right, well, that's one for you. What's your second guess?
I'm going to go with 5.
5, and Maynard?
I'll go with 2 this time.
I'm going to go with 1. Here we go. And it's come up, and it says on the face of the die, it says 14 minus 9.
2.
Could be 2.
14
I think it's 5.
5.
Oh, that's right.
It's 5. Hang on. All right, one more. That's odd.
I'm going 5 again.
5, Maynard?
I'll go with 3 this time.
I'm going to go with 12. Here we go. Yeah, all right. And it's come up and it says 2.5 times 2.
That's 5.
Richard, you've been playing a bit jiggery-pokery here. I think it's about time you came clean.
I better come clean. Folks, this week arrived in the post a giant wooden die, six-sided, and I kid you not. One side says 5, the next one says 14 minus 9, the next one says 2.5 times 2, the next one says what number Susan picked, the other side says Susan's number, and finally there's a V, which is the Roman numeral for 5.
So where'd this come from? Let me guess, someone called Susan?
You'd think, but it comes from Canada. Well, it comes...
Everyone in Canada is called Susan. How will you know?
It comes from Adrian Hill.
The Prime Minister's called Susan.
That's right. It comes from Adrian Hill in Canada, who listens to the Skeptic Zone for the Easter eggs just recently. And what a wonderful, funny completely unexpected surprise that was. So thank you very much, and for all those people who picked 5, well done.
I think the only real winner here is Susan.
Cheers, everybody.
Susan!
Yay!
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.